Have you ever wondered what you would do if your pet was sick or injured and you couldn't afford their treatment? Well, unfortunately, many pet parents are faced with that situation every single day. So much so that there's now a term that I'm hearing a lot called economic euthanasia. Basically, that means that the pet parent chooses to euthanize their pet primarily because of financial reasons. I know I never want to be in that situation, and I don't want you to be either. Today's episode is going to share the number one thing that you can do to avoid finding yourself in this situation. So stay tuned. You're listening to Starlight Pet Talk, a podcast for pet parents who want the best pet care advice from cat experts, dog trainers, veterinarians, and other top pet professionals who will help you live your very best life with your pets. We also share inspiring rescue and adoption stories from people who've taken their love of pets to the next level by getting involved in animal welfare. My name is Amy Castro, and I'm the founder and president of Starlight Outreach and Rescue and a columnist for Pet Age magazine. I've rescued thousands of animals and helped people just like you find the right pet for their family. My mission is to help pet parents learn all the ways that they can care for, live with, and even have fun with their pets, so they can live their very best lives and their pets can too. Welcome to Starlight Pet Talk. I'm your host, Amy Castro, and our subject today is such an important one that I'm going to tell you right up front that I want you to share this with all of your friends and family that have pets. My guest today is Kristin Lynch, and she has been the executive director of NAPHIA, which is the North American Pet Health Insurance Association, for about 12 years now. And Kristin started in this position as a part-time person, and it has grown into a full-time position as the industry has grown and evolved. And I know I have seen that just in my experience when I first started in working in veterinary medicine as a vet assistant. There was no such thing as health insurance. And then when in my years went on, a couple of companies popped up, but it still wasn't something that people were using. But today, I hope at the end of this episode, we have convinced every pet parent out there to investigate it for themselves and their pets for a variety of reasons that we're going to touch on. So, Kristin, thank you so much for making the time to be here with me today.
Well, thank you so much for having me. I'm really excited to talk to you.
Thank you.
Yeah.
So, Kristin, tell us what NAPHIA does.
So NAPHIA is a trade association. And our first mission is to educate people about pet insurance, what it is, and probably more importantly, what it isn't, what people shouldn't expect, and then what they should expect from it. And when I say educate people, I mean pet owners, but we also mean, the veterinary profession, folks who work in the veterinary profession that aren't vets, but you run the practices and do a lot of the work behind the scenes. We speak to other organizations in the animal health community, and we also try to work with regulators and legislators to explain to them what pet insurance is, because it's a little bit of a mixed breed of coverage. It's got the health piece, which is really important because it's not life insurance, it's not liability insurance for pets. It really is about covering health care for your pet. But because the law sees pets as property, it also is property and casualty insurance. So it operates sort of between the two lines of those types of coverage.
And that's interesting. Yet another thing I didn't know about pet insurance. Has it kind of always been that way, or has that been part of the evolution of pet insurance?
Yeah, so when it was first launched in the US, I think it was around the late 80s, and it was a company called Veterinary Pet Insurance. It later became nationwide. The very first pet that was ever insured was actually Lassie, the television dog. And it has grown pretty steadily since then. But yes, it has always been pets were deemed as property under the law. And so the coverage got treated that way from a regulatory perspective immediately. And as you could guess, because Lassie was in California, and that's where the home office of that particular company was based. That was the first state that started offering it, but it rolled out across the country very quickly. And I think up until the pandemic, our growth has been pretty steady as an industry. We've had new companies coming on, but it's really been the past 3-4 years that the big insurance companies that offer home and auto and other kinds of personal lines of coverage have taken an interest in the product and said, first of all, we want to add this to our lines of business because it makes sense, but also very clearly their customers love and care about pets. And they recognize that it's sort of a companion product for a lot of the other coverage they offer. It makes good sense to have it in their bundle of coverage.
When I was logging on, because I have USAA insurance as a former military person, and I could swear I saw the other day that they're offering pet insurance, and I was very surprised by that.
Yeah, when they first looked at it, they approached the association, and that's often what happens. So there's a couple of different ways that coverage is offered, and so there are underwriters that sort of take the risk of the coverage, and you'll see that in almost any kind of coverage. There are brands that are specific to pet, and then there are brands that have evolved out of other property and casualty lines. So that's where you start to see the big companies. And then there's sort of a white label type of coverage. And it's no different from any other coverage. But what it is that a brand will see, like a USAA or maybe thinking like a financial company or another ASPCA is a good example of that, where they say, hey, this is something we want to be able to deliver to our members or our customers or our shareholders or our employees. And we're going to partner with a provider to deliver that. And we're going to shape it under our brand and offer services and everything that fit our brand. And so it's sort of offered those different ways. And they're all the same. It doesn't mean, I'm not saying the coverage is exactly the same, but the quality of coverage, the dependability of the company, the way it's underwritten, the way it's regulated, it's always the safe, secure, and trusted.
That's good to know. And when you're looking at such a wide variety of organizations that are offering the insurance, and we're going to get to the issue of kind of picking through some of that and how to make decisions, because the decision is going to be different for each pet parent. But before we get into that, why would you say, because I know what my answer would be, but why do you think it's so important that pet parents have pet insurance these days?
Yeah. So I think the first thing is that since the pandemic, I think we have reached a pivotal state of the way we view our pets. In the human health and in the animal health world, there's sort of these concepts of the relationship between us and pets and the benefits of that. And one of the things that you'll hear people refer to more and more is what they call the human-animal bond. There's actually an organization, a really good one out of Washington called HABRI, that is doing some amazing work in that space and advocating for the value of that for people and their pets. So that, I believe, that bond, we've been waiting for that to reach this sort of really unique state. And I think the pandemic was sort of that turning point for us as a society where we were at home, we were living alongside our pets every day. We weren't leaving them and then coming back and spending a couple of hours with them at night and then going to bed. We were playing with them. They came with us out for walks. I mean, I know people who bought pets for their pet during that time.
Me too.
Fluffy needs a friend, so we're going to get one. And I think it changed the way we see them and the way that we care for them and the way that we value them. And I think that is sort of that big turning point that we've seen, and that is impacting the way we want to care for them. And we are pet families now. We are not pet owners. We're not pet parents so much as, one person and a pet is still a family. And that's how you view your pet. And I think if you view your pet and value your pet that way, it's important for you to be able to go, gee, not only can I feed my pet today, but can I care for them if something happens? And it does. It always does. Just like with people, pets get sick and their lives, unfortunately, are shorter and more concentrated. So those things happen in a decade versus over 50, 60, 70 years. So it's more concentrated in a pet. So I think if you love your pet, if you don't have insurance, you have to make sure that you have that financial ability to be proactive and take care of them the way you would take care of another family member.
Yeah, I mean, that's so true. And that's something that we face in our rescue and Starlight Outreach and Rescue and lots of rescues is people they're contacting us to give up their pets for economic reasons. They're
Right.
moving, they can't afford this, they can't afford that. But probably the most sad situation is when I've got somebody that calls me in tears because their animal got heartworm. Their animal got out the front door and got hit by a car, and
Yeah.
they can't afford to pay the thousands of dollars for treatment for whatever it might be. And so because they want their animal to have a chance at life, they would rather give it up to us than to do what a lot of pet parents are forced to do, is to make decision to euthanize a pet on a financial basis. The pet could be saved, but we're using this term a lot in nowadays, economic euthanasia. When you've got a situation where somebody is primarily euthanizing their pet for financial reasons, they just can't afford to pay to fix whatever's going on with their pet. And it's tragic and sad when you've got somebody that loves their pet and is a good pet owner, and it's just this one thing. It's the financial that is just, they can't swing it.
You're right. Yeah. It's funny you say that. People are hearing that term now, but it's actually the reason that a veterinarian started the very first pet insurance company in the US. He was a vet. He saw that happen in his practice. I think he tells the story of, a family, a child saying to him, "Why do we have to do this?" And I've read numbers. They probably have changed now, but because of inflation and things like that. But they're saying that threshold is around $600 is the threshold where someone will consider euthanasia because they can't afford to do it. And I have to think that there's got to be some impact on the veterinary practice as well, because people are surrendering pets they can't treat to them. These are people who, yes, they run a business and that, but they're also called to care for pets, and they're having to make those decisions themselves or take on the cost of treating pets that are seriously ill, seriously injured. And then that reflects in the cost of care for all of us, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And I work closely with my veterinarian who helps us with the rescue, but also, with other veterinarians in the area and in my regular work. And people don't realize what the veterinarians and the technicians go through when they're on the other side of that. When they get accused, all you care about is money. And it's like, people don't understand that if they did everything for free, then they wouldn't be in business. I mean, it's like, I can't help your pet if I'm not able to keep my business afloat and pay my employees.
So, another thing in this sort of economic environment, you were talking about, why the growth of coverage and what's happened with pet insurance in recent years. Inflation is an increasingly great concern for every family, for every household. And again, when I say families, that's a person and a pet to me. So I think that what I'm reading, veterinarians are facing incredible inflation. And we forget to think about that. So, does the cost of coverage go up? It goes up with the cost of care. And that cost of care is not about making money all the time. That is the cost of lab equipment. I read something, it's gone up like, 30-40%. You're seeing, 20 or 30% increases year over year. And then sometimes there's delays in the rates getting approved at the state level for pet insurance companies. And then those increases get compounded, so all of a sudden there's a big jump in the cost, right? But if you think about it, that cost of coverage, those rate increases are based on what that company experienced from a claims perspective the year before. They're not making those numbers up out of the blue, and they can't raise rates without going to the states and making a case state by state for why the cost is what it is. And that is based on the market. It's based on veterinary costs. It's based on the cost of actually providing the insurance to people and what people are actually claiming for in that previous year.
Yeah, that's got to be obviously a huge piece of it. And it reminds me when you talk about inflation, and you had mentioned earlier that the threshold for a lot of people to not be able to afford care is $600. And now, granted, as a rescue person, my vet bills are thousands of dollars a month, but $600 is not a lot in the grand scheme of things. I mean, that's probably an exam, 4 X-rays, some medication, maybe some type of minor procedure. It's not major orthopedic surgery or my dog got hit by a car kind of thing,
Right.
or my dog has cancer and needs chemotherapy. That's a visit to the vet in many instances.
When we talk about, and whenever I hear people talk about insurance, they always think of sort of catastrophic accidents. But I think that illness is a much greater concern. The costs are greater because they happen very quickly and they escalate. So, you take your pet in for something that seems minor. They do the basic things. A couple of days later, they're not getting better. They do a little more, and they do it based on the economy of that too, right? They start with the things that they think are less serious, and they hope that that's what they are, but they go up. And I think we're also starting to see that the reason that these great big vet bills are coming in is that people have delayed taking their pet to the vet in the first place because of financial reasons, or because we just don't want to see those things, and we don't want to have to pay them. So, and we don't want the pet to be sick. So we're kind of dealing with a little bit of denial, and we put them off, and we put them off. And then, the vet recommends some things to us, and we only do some of them because that felt a little expensive, or we didn't want to have to pay for those pills, or the dog didn't like them. So we make sure that they took them. And then it gets worse and it gets worse, and then it's compounded, right? So you end up with a very serious illness and, yes, a great big bill that probably could have been prevented had we been more proactive at the beginning. Okay. From working in a practice, you also know that pets love us and they want to protect us, and they mask a lot of the things that they're feeling and experiencing until they can't anymore. So, they go and hide, or they wag their tail and you think, oh, they're fine, right? And then all of a sudden, bang, they're not. And It's serious and you have to take them in.
Yeah, it kind of seemingly sneaks up on you, but in reality, it's been there for a while.
I don't have pet insurance on one of mine either. And it's because it wasn't my decision. I met my now husband. His pet wasn't insured. He didn't even know pet insurance existed. So I have the comparison of 2 pets, one of which is getting very old. And of course, those things are starting to happen all the time. And he's always surprised. Oh, it's $1,000. Oh, but you pay those things out for other things in your life. And this is the pet you love. So I always find it really interesting how people kind of straddle those love and financial decisions, and you wouldn't make those decisions around another family member that way. And we need to not make those decisions around our pets that way. We need to make their emotional decisions, and they're challenging, and you're straddling the financial and the economical impact on your home and your life. And pet insurance is a proactive tool. It's not a reactive tool. It's not like credit, right? Where there's lots of credit out there for everyone. Doesn't need to be pet credit. It can be any kind of credit. But we live month to month. We are not a nation of savers. So we live month to month. If we make a lot of money, we have that money planned every month. It's accounted for. It's going towards our kids' university. It's going towards, fixing our roof or our next vacation or our braces or, those things. Our mortgage, our car payments, those are the basics. But when something happens, you need the safety net. And knowing you have that coverage empowers you to make different decisions, make them quicker, be more proactive about how you're going to treat your pet. It gives you that confidence that you can do those things. And I think that's a big reason why people should think about getting it, and get it when their pet's young, before the cost has gone up, because your pet already has pre-existing conditions. And just like us, as we age, we have increasing risk of getting ill and having major illnesses and having accidents. So
yeah, and we pay accordingly. It's more expensive. So it's the same, same with our pets. You wait until something's wrong, and either A, it might not be covered at all, or it's going to cost you. And that actually, when you said something about, not taking our pets in because we don't want to pay the $50, $100 for this or that. And so we just kind of avoid it. I have found that the people that I know that have pet insurance, do the routine, the annuals that they're supposed to be doing to, head things off at the pass, for lack of a better term, or to maintain their pet's health instead of trying to fix their pet's health. Because that's one of the benefits of having that pet insurance, is that that routine stuff is covered in some form or fashion.
Yeah, in some cases it's covered, in some cases it's not. But what it also does is it means that you don't have some big catastrophic bill that prevents you from doing the preventive things, right? So there is wellness available for in a lot of forms. There is a pet insurance version of wellness. Many companies are offering that now. And then, as you know, there are other wellness programs. For me, wellness means I'm doing the expected things, right? I'm being proactive about spay or neuter. I'm doing flea and tick. I'm doing my vaccinations every year and those types of things. And I'm planning out those costs. I'm sort of amortizing those costs so that I don't get hit with them all at one time. And then the actual pet health insurance piece is for the unexpected, which is always surprising to me because, of course, they're going to get sick. Of course, there's going to be injuries and accidents. It's a life. And if they don't, you're really lucky, right? But be prepared for not being lucky. And then if you have paid out that, it doesn't matter about the return on investment. It's the peace of mind and you don't have to worry about it, right? And that is another piece that so many people come to me and say, is it worth it? And they do the calculations. Well, I don't not insure my house, right? I don't not insure my car and then go, at the end of it, I didn't have an accident or my house didn't burn down. So was it worth it? Did I get my return on investment? This is your pet. Stop thinking about it like that. It's insurance. It's not an investment. It is a proactive financial tool that is about mitigating risk. And your pet, it's protecting their health and it's making sure that you can provide for that throughout their life.
Yeah, definitely. So is pet insurance, is it the same across the country? Like if I go with a certain company, let's say, and I live in Maine, is it going to cover the same things as it does in Texas or California? Or does it, you mentioned before that it sounds like a lot of things are regulated and go through the state.
Yeah, so it's not like some forms of mandatory coverage where it has to be the same everywhere. And in reality, no insurance is the same in every state because insurance law and consumer law and other types of laws vary from state to state. But there is a movement in the pet insurance world right now. It's called a model law that was passed by the National Association of Insurance Commissioners 2 years ago. And that model law is rolling out across the country so that states do adopt a law for pet insurance. And it can be more unified across all the states. So that said, every state has their flavor, right? Some states, for example, there's consumer protections like free look. In California, it's 30 days. Some states might say, we want it to be 15. Some might make it shorter. Some may not believe in a free look. So free look is basically your ability to return the coverage if you haven't used it in that first 30 days and have a chance to change your mind or get different coverage or whatever. But so those types of things can change. But typically a company designs their coverage and then they file that coverage in each state with certain rates, and that gets approved by the Department of Insurance in that state. And then that's what they sell it for. And it's mostly sold online and virtually, so in a customer center. So people are talking to the company. It feels the same, doesn't matter where they are. And if they happen to move from one state to another, that may slightly change the policy in the next year when it renews. But for the most part, you're going to experience the same coverage across the country. Yeah.
And the categories or the things that are covered, because you had mentioned the idea of there's the health piece and then there's the
wellness piece.
Yeah. What are some of those buckets that people might want to be aware of as to, not necessarily choosing a particular company, but when I'm trying to make a decision as to, okay, I know my pet, I know this situation, I know how I want my pet to be cared for, I know what support or help I might need from an insurance. What are the buckets that I might be looking at?
So, the two big types of coverage, the main coverage is accident and illness combined and accident only. And, when I first got into pet insurance and when pet insurance first got into the marketplace, everyone thought of accidents, because when we were growing up, we lost our pets to accidents. We didn't know they had illnesses because they weren't being diagnosed and things like that. So, we always thought about, oh, my pet got hit by a car, or like an accident would take a pet, right? But illness is far more likely. And because pets are living longer, because veterinary care is following human care in terms of the sophistication and what they can do for your pets. And we want our pets to live longer, healthier lives. So I think that's something like 98 or 99% of coverage now is accident and illness combined. So there's some other things that people should think about. You mentioned, I know my pet, but every breed, whether your dog is large or small, whether it's a mixed breed or not, is prone to certain conditions. You can talk to your vet practice and say, what are some of the conditions that are likely for my pet that I should be watching for? And a lot of that is a good thing to do in a first visit with your practice. Ask them, and what are the costs to care for those type of things? And then the next piece is to say, what am I likely to need? For some people, it's, as I said, month to month, they don't necessarily have a super fixed income, or they have funds that they can pull from other things that are discretionary. Whereas other people have such a tight budget, they don't have that flexibility. And so they need a different kind of coverage. There are a couple of different ways that benefits are paid out. So sometimes it's a great big bucket. If you're looking at the companies, it's sort of a lifetime coverage. It might be $100,000 for your pet's life. And you have this big bucket to draw from no matter what. And of course, that would be more expensive because it's really comprehensive and it's a large amount, right? Others is you have what are called per condition limits. And those are, so if they have diabetes, you have, $2,000 or $5,000. And you have that pocket or an envelope almost that you can draw on until that is used up. And then there are renewable limits where they renew each year. So for example, my dog, I have coverage that is, I think it's $5,000 per condition, and those condition amounts renew every year. And that's because I have a large standard poodle. I talked to my vet and said, what are some of the things that can happen to that dog? And when they do happen, they're big, they're fast, and they're expensive, right? He had an ear condition. I think it cost me ear infection cost me like $3,000 in the first couple of years of his life. It took almost a year to get rid of it. He's fine. He has nothing else now. But thank goodness I had that coverage, because who has $3,000, on a month-to-month basis to pay for that? And it was just a recurring amount of trying different things and taking him back, and then other things popping up because of that condition. So for me, it was, I wanted renewable coverage every year. It kind of is like a reset. And I knew I needed a larger amount. If you have a small dog, you talk to your vet and they say, not as expensive to treat, not as, if we have to put your pet under for a surgery, we don't have to use as much anesthesia. The medicine is cheaper, it's smaller, they take less of it. So those types of things are also considerations, right? And they tend to live longer, so you get it early and you get something that you can keep over their whole lifetime, whereas the larger breed dogs tend to not live as long, and those kinds of costs come earlier. And those are sad realities. But as a pet owner, when you pick a pet and you love a breed, or you have a mixed breed and you know that it has sort of it might be a Labradoodle, it might be a terrier poodle cross or something, it's likely to have some of the predispositions of both of the breeds that you're getting in that mix, right? If you know that, I think almost every rescue dog has some husky and some lab, right?
Pretty true.
And so those conditions are likely, knees, hips, those types of things.
Well, and big dogs in general too. I mean, it's just, the bigger the dog, the more likely some of those issues can be. And I think it's so important that you mentioned, because there's two pieces to what you said that I want to make sure everybody really heard. Is number one, to have those conversations with your veterinarian and to really dig in.
And the whole team.
Yeah. And And it is so important to do it early. No, not only because I'm assuming, and you can tell me, I get a new puppy or I get a new dog or whatever the case may be, that I get the insurance right away versus waiting until I start realizing, this dog's costing me a lot of money because it's got a lot of problems with this or that. Why is it so important to do that early? I know that it's got to be the cost for one thing, but is it the coverage as well?
Yeah. So when coverage is underwritten, when you're enrolled, a pet insurance company takes 3 to 4 things. There's 3 things, but they're like technically 4. First of all, is it a dog or a cat? So that's sort of the obvious one. And then the next is, what is the breed, right? And they know from their own insurance claims over many years what the risk of a particular breed is. Some of them are very prone to certain conditions, so all that is factored in, and they know that. It's calculated at the time you enroll. And then the age of the pet, obviously. And we talked about that just because as we age, we're more prone to having diabetes, heart disease, dental issues, all of those things. So same with pets. And again, that happens in a much tighter time period than it does in human health. And then the last piece, which is not something people typically think about, is your postal code. And that's because the cost of veterinary care varies depending on where you live. So if you're in downtown Manhattan, you can bet that the cost there is going to be higher than it is going to be in, the middle of Ohio or something like that. So they kind of have those postal codes worked out inside of the insurance underwriter. They know the cost of care across the country because they have millions of pets insured and they know what those claims are going to cost. And so that's the factor. If you move to a place that's less expensive, over the next year, you might see some changes in your coverage, or it may not go up the way inflation does in another place because the place you've moved might be less expensive to treat that particular pet. So again, what you get is your premium is reflective of what the insurance company knows is going to be the cost to treat your pet and the likelihood that that pet is going to become ill or injured in their lifetime.
Right. Which is pretty much what all insurance is based on.
It is.
I mean, it's that risk benefit, or not risk benefit, but the risk analysis that goes along with it. You had mentioned that part of it is your pet's breed. So in rescue, the question we get all the time with dogs is, what is it? It's like, I don't know. I mean, we don't DNA test every dog that comes in. So what is a pet parent to do in that instance when it's great if I know a standard poodle is a standard poodle, a Doberman is a Doberman, but I mean, I've got a friend that got a golden retriever from a golden retriever rescue, and I would swear it's a golden retriever, not a show quality golden retriever, has no golden retriever in the DNA theoretically, and again, is that accurate? I don't know, but what do you do in those instances? Do you have to DNA test your pet to tell them the breed, or do you?
No. They have when you're enrolling, there's sort of a drop down menu, or you can talk it through with the customer rep that you're talking to. But there's mixed breed, and if you have no idea, and it looks like a whole bunch of things, there's just mixed breed, right? Yeah. They don't have Heinz 57, but yeah.
Right. And I'm assuming that might be better to choose that than to guess a breed.
I would agree.
Because you might be, you might be throwing in something that may not even, like I said, the golden retriever. No golden retriever in that dog, but if you saw it, you probably think it's a golden retriever too. I was surprised.
Exactly. Just because it looks like that doesn't mean that's what it is. So yeah. And
exactly.
I mean, research is showing more and more that pets that are mixed breeds are also less prone to certain conditions.
What do you think are some of the things, and we may have, I think we've hit on some of them, but I just want to make sure we didn't miss anything, that pet parents are kind of surprised about when it comes to insurance? Either, maybe it's things like, oh, I thought it would have covered that, and maybe I just didn't read the fine print, or, oh, I didn't realize that was one of my benefits. Is anything in particular?
Yeah, well, so first of all, pet insurance companies are pretty friendly. They have customer centers. They're very geared around being transparent, answering questions. Most people don't read their coverage. Most policies today are written in plain language. They'll say these things are covered, and they'll say these things are not covered. So one of the things I say to people is get your pet insured quickly and as young as possible. It doesn't mean that if they're a little older, you can't still cover them, and you can, but you know that the cost is going to start lower. It may go up a bit as the pet ages, and there are other things that do go up, like there are deductibles, and the deductibles can go up because the likelihood of claiming is high. And I also remind people that one of the unique pieces of pet insurance is it's insurance that you use. People claim all the time. It's not like your car insurance or house insurance where you avoid claiming.
Yeah, it's like,
you
don't claim if you don't have to. Yeah.
And if you don't use it, you're super lucky and you should feel really good about that. You shouldn't go, gee, should I cancel my coverage because I've been super lucky, right? That's
like saying, I'll stop wearing my seatbelt because I've been super lucky and not had a wreck.
Because I haven't been in an accident. Exactly. But people do funny things. So we do that stuff. And you know what? Look at and talk to a couple of different companies. See what feels comfortable for you. Try on a few things. It's just a couple of conversations. It's not super complicated, but we make it complicated. You know, we make charts and we compare things. Get the one that feels right for you. If your pet hasn't developed a pre-existing condition, you can continue to look, but you know you have that coverage in place, right? You're safe.
Good point.
So make a decision quickly. I know so many people that have put it off and said, oh yeah, every time. And, you know, because I work in the industry, they automatically say to me, oh, you know, I'm going to get that coverage. And they don't. And then their pet gets some serious illness and they say to me, I wish I had coverage. And then the next time they have a pet, they get the coverage right away.
Right.
And that's what we're seeing, unfortunately, because pets live shorter lives and we know we're going to have more than one pet in our lifetime, sometimes at the same time. It's that next generation that ends up getting insured because it's just like my own household. My pet is insured. My husband's pet isn't because he didn't know about it at the time. So people need to really kind of think about those things quickly, make a decision fairly quickly. You can always cancel the coverage and get a different coverage, but get it in place. And most times you're going to stick with it because you're going to use it. And it's worth it to you.
Does NAPHIA have tools on your website that'll help a parent? Because people are going to research no matter how much you tell them, you know, don't go crazy over the research. But I don't know that as a pet parent, if I just said to myself, okay, I need to get pet insurance. I just got this new puppy or this new kitten or whatever. So I'm going to go out to Google and I'm going to Google pet insurance and a gazillion different articles and companies and whatever is going to come up and it's going to be overwhelming. And then I just shut the laptop and walk away.
Yeah, we have a lot. So first of all, under our Find Pet Insurance tab, you'll see all the companies listed that we have as members. We estimate that we have about 98% of the coverage in the US is offered by our members. So
Good.
That means that there's a couple of companies that haven't joined us, and that's just because they're starting up or may only be in a few states and they're not at the national level yet. But all of those companies have great products, have a range typically of coverage. So there's sort of lighter or more comprehensive coverage you can choose. And it's very easy. There's a little guide for, you know, questions to ask yourself and to ask your veterinarian. And again, it doesn't hurt for people to take a look at the websites of those companies, get a quote and compare, you know, what kind of coverage that they're looking at. Do they need a big lump sum? Do they want something in the middle, or do they just want to have something light because they know that they just need that little bit of help that month, and if something bigger comes, then they can move things around and pay for it afterwards. But just be honest with yourself about what it is that you'll need when that crisis hits. And also remember that it's going to hit. It's whether that pet hits when it's young, when it hits when it's, you know, sort of a couple years old, or whether it hits later. You yourself said you had cancer and it was treated. Cancer in pets is being treated all the time, and pets continue to live for many years after that. So it's just a responsible thing to know. And don't be afraid to download policies. Most companies have sample policies on their website. They're written in plain language. You can look at them and read them, and then you can ask questions about them. You know, if my pet gets cancer, is that covered? If my pet has this condition, would that be covered? How does this work?
Yeah, that is so. I think that is so important, is being willing to ask those questions, because I think too many times, and like I said, I'm facing this with my own insurance. It's like the monthly cost really gets your attention and you kind of get focused on that. But what are you paying for? You know, that's what's important. It's not because that lower cost, you may be kicking yourself later on because it doesn't cover the things that that you could have predicted that your pet was going to need. I mean, we can't predict everything, but we want to make the smartest decision where we're balancing our financial good judgment with our pet's health care. I mean, those are two things that are hard to juggle. So you want to make sure you make a good decision.
Well, and the other funny thing we do is we have a tendency to like to pay for the fun things. So we think nothing. I mean, I go down to the pet store on a Friday night and I walk out with a chew that's, $15 for my dog. It's got a little salmon on it or something. And I get sucked into that. And then I'll look at my bill every month and go, oh, gee, should I keep paying this, $50, $60, $70, $30 policy? And I don't think about all the bells and whistles and things that I've done throughout the month and cutting back on those. Instead, I look at the thing that's the target on my credit card statement or, on my automatic withdrawal that month. And you're right, we hyperfixate on that thing and go, oh, that's going to make such a big difference for us. It isn't in the big scheme of things. But that $3,000 hit, or even that $300, $400, $500 hit in the middle of a month where things are tight. My mortgage payment just went up and the interest is going up on my mortgage payment. It's costing more to fill my car at the gas station, those types of things. And then we look for that. We think that little saving of this amount is going to be the thing that saves us. That's actually when you need your coverage, is when you're financially strained. That's when you should be thinking, boy, am I ever lucky and glad that I got that coverage in place, because now I'm protected, right?
That's such a good point, is to really look at what you're spending, because that is something that we see. And I try not to be judgy. I try very hard not to be judgy in rescue, but I sometimes will see things where people will call and they're looking for, maybe not to surrender their pet, but they're looking, because we do provide financial assistance for pet owners to keep their pets. And it's like, okay, you want me to pay for that, but you've been spending your money on this, and this. And I think, again, try not to judge, but when we're judging ourselves, maybe we need to look at, how many times did I buy unnecessary clothes or toys or things
how often am I getting my nails done?
Oh yeah, stuff for yourself. Yeah.
It's really surprising when people are looking at those things saying that they can't afford that, but they're carrying, their expensive coffee when they come in and saying they're broke, right? And I just think a couple times a week, the cup of coffee that you're buying would cover your pet for the month.
100%. That's such a good point. So make your coffee at home and cover your pet so you're not crying at the vet's office.
But then don't target that one thing as the thing that you're going to save your money on that month, right?
Yeah, good point.
I do say all the time, the cost of coverage is reflective of the cost of care. If care is going up, and again, not targeting veterinary practices, because I have tremendous respect and empathy for the work that they do, for the costs and impact of inflation on their business right now. And the fact that, to go to a veterinary school or to be trained as a vet tech these days is like sometimes hundreds of thousands of dollars, or, many thousands of dollars of debt that they carry for many years. They're not making the best wages in the world. They're not being paid what a human doctor is, or, even what our average income these days. So a lot of them are not making the best money, have debt, and are in this because they love pets and they're very dedicated to it. So no one's begrudging them that and their need to keep their practice running and to provide that important service, right? So it's just where we all live. The world is a riskier place right now, and it's a more expensive place, and it just happens to be the environment that we're in. And I think pet insurance is a really great way to be proactive and plan for those known costs we're going to have to spend at some point in our pet's life.
Good point. So any final thoughts, anything that I missed that we want to hit on?
I think the biggest thing that I like to remind people is that pet insurance companies are used to talking to pet owners. They talk to them every day. It's an emotional product. People are emotional when they're making the decision because they're thinking about their pet. They're emotional when they're claiming because their pet is sick and they're having to make tough decisions at a time when they're dealing with the emotional impact and stress of their pet's illness at the same time as they're dealing with the emotional and stress of the economic impact on their lives. And, when we meet with regulators to talk about pet insurance, it's emotional. It's an emotional conversation. People love their pets. We care for them very deeply. The people who work in pet insurance have pets, love pets, and they're in it because they stumbled into this really unique little product, and they end up staying because they're passionate about it and they really believe that it's a very positive way to be able to provide for a pet that you love. So I just like to remind people to not put off those uncomfortable conversations around money, not put off the reality of owning a pet and loving a pet, and them being part of your family, and to look at pet insurance as an option for providing that care that we want to be able to provide, and not hesitating to provide that care, not waiting it out.
Yep, that's good advice to leave everybody with. Well, Kristin, thank you so much for being here with me today and taking the time to educate us on the importance of pet health insurance. I really appreciate it.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm always happy to answer these questions, and you asked some really good ones. And I will provide you with a couple links to some pages on our website where people can go and look at all the different coverages that are available. Like you said, you were surprised to find out that USAA had one. People might be surprised to find out a brand that they already know, love, and deal with has one that they might be able to have access to.
Yeah, definitely. So we'll add that to the show notes for all of our listeners. Thank you to everybody for listening to another episode of Starlight Pet Talk. I hope that this convinced you that you need to investigate pet health insurance. And please share this with other pet lovers, pet owners, family members who are shopping for a pet right now, because it's a life-saving decision that you're going to make for you and for your pet. Thanks for listening to Starlight Pet Talk. Be sure to visit our website at www.starlightpettalk.com for more resources, and be sure to follow this podcast on your favorite podcast app so you'll never miss a show. If you enjoyed and found value in today's episode, we'd appreciate a rating on Apple. Or if you'd simply tell a friend about the show, that would be great too. Don't forget to tune in next week and every week for a brand new episode of Starlight Pet Talk. And if you don't do anything else this week, give your pets a big hug from us.